Hi everyone, thanks for having us here. We're going to talk about how Bitcoin development works, and we have amazing people here that work it or works on different projects. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here. So thank you for being here. And I think we can start by introduce ourselves, like short introduction. So I'm Bruno. I am Director of Education at 21, and I work on Bitcoin Core. And Gloria?
Sure, I'm Gloria. I'm one of the maintainers of Bitcoin Core. I focus mostly on mempool and peer-to-peer stuff.
I'm Davidson. I work a variety of Bitcoin open source projects, like the main one is Floresta, but I also work with Utrexo and some Rust stuff like Rust Bitcoin, and now I'm gonna work some stuff with PDK. So yeah, generally Bitcoin open source.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I also go by NiftyNei. I work on Lightning projects called Core Lightning, and I also organize conferences for developers called Bitcoin Plus Plus.
Nice. So we're going to talk about how Bitcoin development works, and we have different projects like Lightning, Utrexo, Bitcoin Core, so it's nice. And I think we can start with how and why did we start working on these projects? Like, Lisa?
Yeah, so I got into working on Bitcoin through my work. So I was a software developer for a long time. I started doing Android apps. It was like my first dev career. I was the Android app dev. I decided I wanted to get out of mobile development and try something else. So I ended up getting hired at a company that had a lot of Java on the back end. It just so happened that the team that they were hiring for at the time that I joined was the Bitcoin team. So I started working on a custodial wallet as my first project, and then soon after that found an opportunity to contribute to the larger open source ecosystem by contributing to Lightning, and ended up getting into Lightning in 2018, which is very early in the development of the network.
Yeah, so I started working on Utrexo. It was my first project with Bitcoin because I participated in the Summer of Bitcoin when I was in college. So last year in college, I subscribed to some of Bitcoin because Lucas bullied me to do that. He was messaging me every day. And I started working on Utrexo, then I started working on Floresta. It's a project that uses Rust. It's my implementation of Utrexo in Rust. And then I started meeting people and started working on other projects as well. And now I have reached like a lot of different code bases, and it's been nice.
I also started in college. I went to Berkeley and I joined blockchain at Berkeley, and we explored kind of blockchain as an advanced computer science subject with cryptography and distributed systems and security, and that was supremely interesting to me. And the reason I picked, there's a lot of reasons why I ended up in Bitcoin, but one of the biggest ones was wanting to solve a very specific problem. And Bitcoin Core just feels like the ideologies that I have, it's like a perfect Venn diagram of working on something extremely meaningful for the world, and specifically the problem that I'm interested in, as well as the intersection between that and really cool problems. I remember reviewing Mini-Sketch and pulling out my abstract algebra textbook from college and being like, oh my god, this is actually useful. Whereas all the other kind of software internships that I had done was a lot of software plumbing, where you're trying to get APIs to fit together, and that's fun and it can be very high impact, but maybe not as intellectually stimulating. But sorry, that was a long tangent. Basically, I heard about the Chain Code Labs residency and applied to that, and just started. I remember cloning Bitcoin Core, and it was so easy to get it running, and that was really different from a lot of other software projects that I've worked on that are open source, and that was life-changing for me.
Nice. So you basically jumped from the college to the Bitcoin world, basically. Yeah. I started contributing to Bitcoin Core, I think, in 2021 or 22. I don't remember exactly, but I attended the Chain Code seminar. And then I was studying, I think, Taproot. Then I was basically let me see the tests, the functional tests, to understand how it works. Then I saw something wrong, then I submit a PR and yeah, fix that. Then Lucas convinced me to work on Bitcoin Core and then work full time on it. So yeah, but before Bitcoin, I worked for some companies as a software engineer, and yeah, that's how I started. And I think a lot of people asks me, and we can talk about it, like, what do we usually do as a Bitcoin developer? What is our day-to-day like? So what do we do? Because when we say like, I work on Bitcoin, people usually ask me, oh, soft fork, hard fork, consensus. No, there's a lot of different stuff to do in the Bitcoin world. So what's your day-to-day like working on a Bitcoin project?
I can go first.
You can start, yeah.
Sure. It's a little hard to get used to because you don't have a boss, you don't have anyone telling you what to do or whether you're doing a good job at it. But the breakdown, at some point I was kind of tracking my hours and trying to bucket it and then figuring out how, like debugging whether or not that was being effective. So now I try to spend about 50% of my time on review and learning. Like, we don't take classes for specific areas of the code base. We're responsible for our own learning and making sure that that's up to date and always growing. So that goes into that and reviewing PRs as a maintainer. That's like probably more expected of me as well to do more of that. And then maybe 30 to 35% of my time is working on my own projects. So I've had kind of 2 big long-term projects over the last couple of years, as well as kind of little smaller ones like bug fixes and whatnot. So yeah, like truck and package relay were a huge part of my time. So I may be different from other people in that, but typically, you have your own PRs that you're working on. And then the last 15 to 20%, I work on things that I call advocacy. So that includes kind of mentoring people, running the PR review club to encourage people to come and review PRs together, creating content for people to understand different parts of the code base better, coming to conferences and trying to orange pill people and to maybe recruit a few of you in the crowd to work on Bitcoin Core. So I bucket that in advocacy because I think it's really important. But of course, everyone has their own kind of makeup of probably these 3 or more buckets. And to me, like I'll just add, it often changes week to week. Like sometimes I'll have a week where I really want to write code and get that feature done. So like almost 100% of my time is writing code that week. And sometimes I have weeks where I'm trying to grok a very specific PR and it'll take me like 2-3 days just to figure out that portion of the code base. And then like a few more days to actually look at the PR itself and look through the code changes. And so it can be kind of week to week as well.
Yeah, I'm not that organized. I just go. But it's something similar, I guess. You can't like run away from this idea. You have to review a lot of code. You have to do your own code. In my case, it's also very researchy at the moment because I have like a ton of technology that are just being developed. It's like something that was an email lost back in 2017. And I just got it back and started working on this. I'm working on a project with Robin Souza. That's like an idea that he just dropped on the mail list and no one really looked at it. And we started working and he's very excited about it. So there is a lot of research, like we do in college, take a paper, start drawing some stuff, like some schematics. There's a lot of that. Utrexo is like a bunch of trees, so I have like a notebook with a lot of trees drawn because I need to, this proof needs this position. So it's very interesting. My mother is always like, my desk like a mess, and she's always like, you need to clean this up. No, but I need this. I need this. Yeah, so as a maintainer, I have to review PRs. Now Floresta, which is my main project, is getting some contributors. There is one that's part-time granted by OpenSats, so I have to review that. I sometimes review things outside of my main projects, like Rust Bitcoin, and even libsecp. I reviewed some stuff there, like for example the Alligator Swift PR. I was one of the reviewers, and so yeah, a little bit of everything, and the hardest part is always, you are your own boss, so you have to find what to do, and sometimes you can be your toughest boss. So it's also a finding like balance to not work too much. For some time when I was like starting the projects, I used to work like the whole week, like even weekends. So I was like, no, this is not sustainable.
Yeah, Rusty's, so I work on Core Lightning, which is a Lightning implementation written in C. It's really designed to be a reference implementation for the Lightning specs. Working on Lightning is a little bit different than working on some other projects in this space, and that's because we have a pretty robust spec process, which means that a lot of the work that I'm doing is writing out how something, so like when I'm working on a new feature for Lightning, it's not just going to be for the code base that I'm working on. The idea is that the project or the proposal that I'm writing, not only will I be producing code, I'll also be producing a written documentation of how it should work. And then it's also talking to the other implementations, either at spec meetings or through conversations offline or through the mailing list, explaining why we think this is a good project that they should also adopt. And then once you've convinced the other implementations that this is something that they should also implement, it's working with them in terms of making sure that the spec language of what you've written down is clear, and then that at the end of the day, their implementation and your own implementation have cross-compatibility. In addition to that kind of extra spec work that we do in Lightning, there's all the normal stuff of, there's a bug in the code, we have to find it and track it down, waiting for the CI to finish so your tests look good. On Core Lightning, we take a lot of pride in our commit history. So that's the way that the commits are written into the code. So if I'm working on code, it's not just enough to make the changes. I also have to go back and rewrite my commit history a lot of the time, such that whenever someone is reviewing it, the series of commits presents a complete narrative that explains what was changed and why. So we do a lot of work, I think, in Core Lightning, not just in writing code, but also in making sure that what we're writing and what we're producing is a nice documentation of how Lightning should work. And that's kind of, I think, built into this idea that we are the reference spec implementation, and we're meant to be something people can look at as a document of how the Lightning specs are implemented. Yeah.
We have that in common, Core Lightning and Bitcoin Core, and it is kind of a lot of work and I think unique. I've seen a lot of new contributors who aren't used to this very, very clean Git history kind of thing, but it's super beautiful because one of the best things about Bitcoin Core and probably Core Lightning as well is you can play like archaeologist in the code base, and every single line of code has been argued over for like thousands of words of discussion threads, and like you can see all the, it's like, I think optimizing for that is so important because as the code base ages, 15 years is pretty long for software that's still so actively kind of maintained and worked on, and constantly people getting their hands dirty in it. And often at tech companies, there's like these parts of the code that like nobody understands how it works. It's like that guy at that desk is the only person who knows how to make it run. So we can't let him go. So we have to pay him a lot or something like that. And making sure we don't have blind spots like that is really important. So yeah, like I think it's really important and sometimes understated.
Yeah. When I was working in the industry, I was used to write code. So I had a product manager, I had a boss, and when I started contributing to Bitcoin Core, I realized that reviewing is very important. I should spend a lot of time reviewing, analyzing issues, like spending time by fixing bugs, for example, analyzing issues like, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And I usually say that working on Bitcoin or working on open source is more like research than development. Like we spend of course we spend time by writing code, but we spend a lot of time by doing research, by tracking PRs, tracking issues, reviewing PRs. And for example, in Bitcoin Core, we have a lot of open PRs. So we need more reviewers. So sometimes I think reviewing PRs is more valuable than open uncritical PRs or unnecessary PRs, like, because we are not a company, so we have people from different part of the world, different organizations, and we should concentrate our efforts on what will move forward the project, like what will develop the project. So yeah, it's what I felt when I started contributing to Bitcoin Core, is that it's very different compared to working on industry, especially because we don't have a product manager, we don't have a boss. We usually don't have a team like working on a company. So yeah, and we spend a lot of time by doing this stuff. And people usually say that the pace of the development is different. Like, for example, if you work on a startup, you are used to have a lot of PRs, a lot of features being delivered. But working on an open source project or on Bitcoin is different. How do you feel the pace? How do you feel this difference? Or I think we can talk about this, because Gloria, for example, delivered big projects like package relay. And how did you get these big projects done? How did you coordinate these? How people got involved?
Yeah, sure. So there's parts of this kind of decentralized open source development that people are not used to. Like we've been saying over and over again, you don't have a boss, and building consensus on what should be worked on and figuring out what to review and spend energy on. Those are all things that take 1 second in a software company where the boss dictates what to do, or the users dictate what to do, and that research is useful. But that process can take a while. And I think it's helpful to sometimes think of our role as protocol developers to not just like introduce improvements to the nebulous, blob of software. It's also to be the people that understand it and know how it runs and be able to debug when something goes wrong. And that's kind of how I encourage people to approach review. But okay, so the question was about pace. I guess my hot take is, it's slow, but for a very good reason. There's very good reasons for that, and slightly not good reasons for that. And we can work on what the bad reasons are, but the good ones come from the fact that like you can't get anything done just by yourself. And it takes a team, it takes a village to get to make all those things happen. And I think for people who want to work on big projects, I would encourage them to first not try to build towards community consensus so much as community understanding. I think one of the reasons why mempool stuff took so long is there wasn't like a large body of people who like are the experts and the guardians of the mempool, and so it's like Shark Tank where you walk in and there's like the panel of judges and you're like, hey judges, like today here's my mempool proposal, I really hope that you'll take it. It's like really we don't even know what. I think when I started working on mempool stuff, like we were like, what is policy? Why do we have policy? Why do we even have a mempool? I remember Lisa wrote a really good piece. It's like, why, like there isn't, like a textbook that teaches you everything that you need to know in order to review this PR. So of course there aren't lots and lots of reviews on these PRs touching areas of the code base that are fairly quiet. And so building community consensus, like writing that OpTech series called Waiting for Confirmation. It's like a very long series that explores all the building blocks and getting to the point of the improvement proposals. It was really important. So first, step one, build community knowledge and understanding, and then build community consensus is, I think, a missing piece for a lot of people.
Lisa, how do you feel about the pace?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time. On Core Lightning, I think, for me, like adding a new feature to core Lightning took a long time when I was working on it. Like the very first thing I did in Lightning was like this new project called dual funding, where you get open channels where both parties can add funds to a Lightning channel at start. When I was writing the implementation for it, I think I rewrote it 3 times. And that took like 1.5 years maybe to get it, maybe a little less than that. And the reason I did that is like I do it one time and then Rusty's like, no, this isn't good, or like come back and just be like, okay, we need to change the way the protocol works, we have to rewrite it. Yeah, so it's just, things take a long time because what looks like success isn't necessarily well defined, and it's not just the behavior. It's not like, oh, I just need this app to do this thing. It's no, like we need this protocol to be written in such a way that we achieve XYZ goals, and maybe your first draft isn't right, maybe your second draft doesn't quite get it. The third time, maybe you get it correct. So it is, I think it is slower, but I like to think, and I think it's quite true, that open source code, especially from these like projects that take their time to really make quality work, tends to mean that you get more interesting, like, and more well-developed, well-refined APIs, because when you write this code and you ship it, it becomes infrastructure that other people build on top of. So you want to make sure that the interface that you're providing for other people to use is going to be one that is worth building on top of, and refining that and getting that right can take, I think, quite a while. So yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, Davidson?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said, and especially when I maintain basically a lot of libraries right now, and I contribute to some libraries, and it's hard because sometimes you are working on like a dark path. You don't know what the users want unless you do something wrong. Then they'll yell at you. I need this. You can't remove this. But yeah, that's why it needs like reaching the community. You can't do everything by yourself and just pretend people follow because they won't. They'll just get angry. Andrew Poster from Ross Bitcoin was actually yelled a lot because he logged to break the API. People in the summit was like, hey, can you stabilize this API, please? Every time we need to do like a version bumping, everything breaks. So yeah, you need to, that's why we have such events like the Lightning Summit and other events to talk to the people that's also work on that, and maybe like downstream dependencies of what you're using to get like, what do you think about the API? What do you think about possible updates? So it's like, it's way more than just code. It's not just code because there's way more people involved in this. So yeah, it's a very different from the corporate world.
Cool. We have 6 minutes. I think we can talk about tips for new contributors or how people can start contributing to these projects. As I said, if you work in industry, working on open source is kind of different. For example, one of the examples that I usually say is basically, for example, refactors. Refactors might not be welcomed because we have people working on the same part of the code, working on other important projects, and when you do a simple, you think it's simple refactor, you can cause conflicts with other work. So yeah, but do you have any tips for people that want to contribute to Bitcoin projects, and yeah, how to start?
I feel like figuring out how to start is probably one of the hardest problems in Bitcoin or any open source development. My way of getting into it is I found a bug, and then I decided to research how to fix the bug. So I feel like maybe a good starting place is using the software and seeing what kinds of things you find that you think need improvements. Or maybe you run into a bug or something, maybe there's some documentation that's not super clear in it, and starting by like, okay, like here's the thing that I think should be changed, and here's why I think it should be changed, and figuring out how to change it. Just because I feel like starting down that path, it gets you familiar with like, okay, what's the process for changing this? What's the process for contributing to this project? Maybe other people don't like your change or think that it's something that needs to be included, etc. But I think even just going through that process of like, okay, here's something that I've been using, here's how I think it could be better, It'll give you, I think, a good appreciation for the kind of work that people who are working on software projects do, and also more people using the software and submitting bugs is never a bad thing. So yeah, I think that's where, I don't know, that's how I've always gotten involved in projects, is by using them and then wanting to change them.
Yeah, I think using the project, like trying out, trying to break it is like a very good starting point. Trying to like review some PR, make some questions. I think all maintainers welcome questions because they have like documenting things. If you had that question, maybe someone in the future will have the same question, so they can like look at the history and look and find out what like those questions were. And also like I think for myself, having other people doing this journey alongside was very important, because sometimes like you can help each other. And here in Brazil, we are lucky because we have 5-bit devs around the country. We have Casa 21, we have 21, which has like a lot of projects. We have the Bitcoin Launch project. Like they are helping you to get into this open source world. So I also think that this community building, like networking. If you go to Casa, you'll see some of the smartest people in Brazilian Bitcoin developers. You can talk to them, they are very nice, they'll answer your questions. So I think networking is also very important. You're not in this alone. You're not alone in this, you don't need to like do that everything alone. There's people that can help you to improve.
I'm gonna try to approach this question a little differently than I have in the past and just kind of talk about mindset. I think my biggest tip would be not to think of it as you want to get into this exclusive club or finally get this job at this cool company. That is not what open source contribution is. Think of it as every single person in the project would love for you to be there and doing your best work and finding what it is that you love and is fulfilling and does impact. And don't feel so much pressure to feel qualified to fix the bug. Of course, like there's going to be a lot of learning to do, and there's so many awesome resources out there: Chaincode Labs, Base 58, BitDevs. There's so many great resources that you can read, and so like I'm not going to talk about those. I think it's more, I want you to know that like we really want you here. And we're not trying to exclude you, and we're not trying to like test you when like we review your PR and we tell you what's wrong with it. It's because we are trying to onboard you and give you data points for how you should format your PRs or do your Git history or whatever it is, or think about the trade-offs of this area of the code base. Like we want you here. We desperately want you here. So remember that.
Yeah, we need more people working on these projects. At Big Devs, yesterday we discussed that report that compares the value of Bitcoin, like 1 trillion, and how many developers we have working on Bitcoin open source projects. And yeah, we need more people. Sometimes people, for example, Bitcoin Core is a project. Yes, it is. But we have a lot of different things into Bitcoin Core. For example, we have mempool, wallet, peer-to-peer, and sometimes people focus on wallet and other people focus on mempool, and there are a lot of sub areas into Bitcoin Core. So sometimes people usually say to me, "Oh, I'm lost because it's very big. There are a lot of things, but you can focus on a small part of the project, like, okay, I want to use and analyze and contribute it to wallet. There's a lot of things to do related to wallet or mempool or peer-to-peer, and we know that it's hard to understand about everything in the code, of course. And yeah, I think we have 20 seconds, so thank you for being here, and thank you for this. Yeah.